Hi guys, Crystal here and welcome to my channel, and today we are going to do some frugal cooking and frugal baking, and I'm going to show you how to stretch some grocery dollars. With today's rising grocery prices, it is even more of an issue, I think, for so many people to try to know how to cook frugally, save money with groceries, because they can be a large expense. I mean, usually after people's rent or mortgage payments, car payments, things like that, food is one of the next biggest expenses. What I am doing today is some frugal cooking for my own kitchen. I'm going to show you what I've got going on here. I have all my appliances set out that I'm going to be using. I have my KitchenAid mixer, I've got my Instant Pot, and here is my two main plans, and then I have an idea for maybe one or two other things. I'm going to see how my time goes. Right now it is 11:15, so in the morning. So we're going to see how long this takes and whether I have time to get to something else when I'm done. But this is what we're going to start with. I am going to make 2 loaves of bread. Bread is very frugal, and it is very good to know how to bake bread. There is absolutely nothing cheaper than making it yourself. Flour is very inexpensive. Bread, yeast, oil, salt, that's it. Maybe a little sugar in there. And that is really all you need to make bread. So you can make a lot of bread for very little money. The next thing I'm going to do is to show you how to turn 1 pound of hamburger into a whole lot of food. Now, when I had a family, I would make this recipe all the time, and it is black bean sloppy joes. And it is, you know, I just look at meat, the hamburger that's in the black bean sloppy joes, as flavoring. While I'm using a whole pound of hamburger, this does make a large recipe because I used to do it for my family. But and I had 8 kids, so I fed 10 of us on this meal with just that 1 pound of hamburger. For just my husband and I nowadays, I am probably going to take half of this recipe, put it into the freezer so that I can have it for a future meal. The first thing I'm going to do here in the kitchen is get my beans cooking, and I'm going to do that in the Instant Pot. I do them dry. I don't soak them. I just dump them in the Instant Pot with salt and with water and cook those for about an hour. Now, it is a myth that salt will turn your beans hard. It does not. It actually makes very flavorful beans and some delicious bean broth. It is super easy to do it that way. Now, if you want to cook them on the stove, you can do that. If you want to soak them the night before, you can do that too. That will just quicken up the cooking process. But I didn't do that, so I am just going to pop them in the Instant Pot. I cook them for 60 minutes because I like my beans soft. If you like your beans to be a little bit harder, then you can adjust the time and have less. But that's what I do, and that's what works for us. I am cooking 3 cups of beans, and I'm going to add those right into my Instant Pot. Beans expand a lot as you cook them, and so I have a standard that I use no matter whether I do it in the Instant Pot or I do it on the stove top, and that is 1 cup of dry beans to 4 cups of water and 1 teaspoon of salt. So to my 3 cups of beans that I have in my Instant Pot, I will be adding 12 cups of water and 3 teaspoons of salt. Okay, so let's talk about beans for just 1 quick second. Beans are a super nutritious food. They are protein packed. They are full of vitamins and minerals, and they are a great addition to anybody's diet. I have cooked beans for years and found them to be a wonderful staple and a great way to keep grocery prices down. You know, they're very frugal. The other thing about this black bean sloppy joe recipe is that if you are a vegetarian, or if you just don't want to have meat, or you know, on occasion to save money, you don't have to put meat in this at all. That's why I say I look at meat like a flavoring. Now that those beans, though, are going and they're tucked back in the corner and they're going to do their thing, I am going to start getting my bread going. Now, my bread recipe will be linked in the description box below so that you can find it. I have another video on how to make bread, so I'm just going to show you as I walk through the process here real quick, but I'm not going to give a detailed explanation of it. And then once my bread is rising and my Instant Pot is doing its thing, I'm going to move on to dessert. So for tonight's dinner. Okay, my bread is rising, and I just leave it in the KitchenAid bowl back here because when I'm done and I want to punch it down, I'm just going to stick it back under the KitchenAid and let it mix up, and that's a quick way to punch it down. It is now 11:45, and so I have my beans going, I've got my bread rising, and I am going to now cook up some dessert. So I'm really excited to share this recipe with you because my apron straight here, because this recipe, my mother used to make this all the time, and it is extremely frugal. So if you just want something to give your family a little bit of sweetness and you don't want to spend a bunch, and this is all ingredients that you have on your shelf, it requires no eggs, no oil, and no milk. I am going to make a Depression era cake. Now, this has also been called a crazy cake. When my mother made it, she had a little recipe card in her recipe box, and it was called a wacky cake. So it's super easy to do. Technically, the recipe says that you should be able to mix all the dry ingredients up in the cake pan, but I'm not going to do that because I'm going to oil the pan and parchment paper, and I'm just going to mix it in a bowl, and then I'll dump that part of it into the pan. But let's get started on making that. Oh, and I'll start by turning my oven on to 350 degrees so that by the time I'm done mixing up my cake, I'm ready to pop it right into the oven. Okay, that was a little challenging with the parchment paper in there to try to get it all mixed up. I think if I did it in the future, I would mix it in a separate pan and then just pour it in here. Okay, you guys, there we go. It has been about less than 45 minutes, and I have dinner started. I have dessert in the oven. I am probably going to go work on editing my video for a few minutes, this video for a few minutes, while I wait for my bread. That will be the next step, is once the bread has doubled in size, then I can divide it into my 2 baking dishes. But so far, so good. I'm making good progress this morning. At this point, the beans had finished cooking in my Instant Pot, and the pressure had dropped, and it was time to drain them and start working on dinner. I began this meal by heating up a little bit of oil and throwing in my pound of hamburger and cooking that up. I added some onions, frozen onions and peppers that I had all chopped up in the freezer that I had done when I was doing some batch cooking, meal prep work. And I cooked all that up until the hamburger was soft and the hamburger was done and the vegetables were soft. I then added in the remaining ingredients. That was some Worcestershire sauce, some vinegar, apple cider vinegar, a can of tomato paste, some ketchup, some brown sugar, and a little bit of the leftover bean broth that I had saved. I didn't have any dry mustard that the recipe calls for, so I just added regular mustard into it, about a tablespoon or so. I got all that stirred up, cooked up, and then I added my black beans. And pretty much that was it. That meal was done. At that point, it was time to pull out my bread, which had turned out to be just so pretty. I always love homemade bread. I also had made up a batch of cream cheese frosting for the cake, and I have that recipe listed below as well. I had a few beans left over from my cooked beans, about 2 cups worth, so I went ahead and put those in a Ziploc bag with a little bit of the bean broth and put them in the freezer for a future use. Well, good morning, friends. I am going to show you a recap now of how this all turned out last night. So in all, I spent about 3 hours, maybe a little bit more, but cooking up all that food. But a lot of that time was spent waiting for things to rise and bake and simmer and that type of stuff. And in between, I was able to do editing, did some laundry. So it was a great use of my morning afternoon. So this is how it all turned out. I ended up taking the pot of the Sloppy Joes and dividing it into 3 parts. We had some of it last night, obviously, and I have enough in here tonight that we are going to eat this again. The other 6 cups, because it ended up being 9 cups altogether, and the other 6 cups I put into put 3 cups each into 2 Ziploc bags. So these are going into the freezer, and that will end up giving me 2 more nights, well, actually 4 more nights of dinners, because each one of those will last us 2 nights. My bread, you can see I have sliced up here. I've started to slice it up, and I'll be slicing up the other loaf. Those I stick into Ziploc bags and put into the freezer. I figured in all, I kind of estimated, didn't get an exact amount, but I kind of estimated that all of this costs about $10. So that's pretty frugal to end up with 6 meals, 6 dinners for us. Bread for at least 2 or 3 weeks worth of bread for the 2 of us. I got the cake and was able to frost it. My calculations on cost came to, like I said, it's an estimate. So I figured about $5 was spent on the hamburger alone, probably a little bit more than a $1, $1.50 maybe for the beans, depending on where you live. That could vary. Of course, any of these prices could vary. The cream cheese, I used 4 ounces, so half of a box, maybe 75 cents or less. So the rest of it is the flour, the oil, you know, the miscellaneous ingredients that all went into that. So for $10, I think I got a lot of value. I got a lot of food and a lot of value for my money. Oh, and I wanted to mention I served the meal, as you saw in the picture already, I served the meal with carrot sticks. So when it comes to frugal vegetables, carrots are, you know, right up at the top of the list with maybe a few other ones, but so that was pretty good. If I would have taken more time, I could have maybe made a carrot salad to go with that. But instead, I decided to go outside and enjoy some sunshine and some time with my grandkids. And so it ended up being carrot sticks, which worked just fine. And really, I mean, those are just pennies to also throw into that $10 total that I had. I hope this video has inspired you to do some frugal cooking of your own, or giving you some recipes and ideas of things that you can cook and ways to stretch your grocery dollars. So thank you all for watching, and if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. I really do appreciate that. And if you'd like to see more videos like this on making frugal meals and stretching those grocery dollars, please let me know in the comments below. Okay, everybody, I will see you all in my next video. Bye-bye.